Thank you, sir. Good evening, everyone. So, today I'm going to present my journal article, which is Net Rounding, a novel approach to efficient and effective rounds of the modern clinical learning environment. So, my outline of presentation will go as about the journal I will be talking about initially, and then about the general information of article, then short presentation on the article, and then its critical appraisal. And before starting my presentation, I would apologize before you all that somehow my presentation is not complete. So I will be using um, after a few slides, I will be using PDF to explain the article. Although this um, uh, article is pertaining to clinical department, and still I will try what these people have done in their research. It's more or less it is related to clinical rounds. Being a non-clinical or a paraclinical person, I don't think that I would be able to do justice with this article, but still I will try my level best. So first about the journal. Um, this article has been taken from BMC Medical Education journal, which is an open access peer reviewed journal. It's part of Springer Nature publishing house, and it's an online journal, and it is one of the 250 scientific journal which is published by BMC. It is indexed in good databases, including PubMed, Medline, DOAJ, Scopus, etc. Its impact factor is 3.263. Um, it charges article processing charge. It charges for every, I mean, for publishing every article, and its article processing charge is $2390, which is around 2 lakhs rupees. And mean response time for first review is around 62 days. So if you are planning for a, I mean, for a medical education research, and you want it to be published, then you may opt for this BMC medical education, and then from case to case basis, it waives off the APC charges also. About the article, it's the article is related to patients rounds in clinical departments. This is a original article which is prepared from original primary research. There are three authors which hails from Department of Medicine, University of California, San Francisco. The study was evaluated by University of California, San Francisco Institutional Review Board. It was the journal received this article on 23rd of November 2021 and was accepted on 3rd of July 2022, and it was published on 4th of August 2022. So I got only 4 days. I mean, although 4 days, I have chosen this article, so I should not say this. Uh, but okay, whatever I have read, I will try to explain. So with this, with after I mean talking about journal and article, and now little bit about background of this pertaining to this topic. So in graduate medical education, attending rounds have been a traditional and foundational practice. We all know. In every medical school, it is being practiced. Traditional attending rounds include the attending physician, medical residents, and medical students. Now, we need to understand this attending physician. Attending physician is a physician who has completed his residency for 3 to 4 years, and then he's working as a physician in that uh, particular program or university or hospital. But in recent, so in relation to, I mean, in contrast to traditional attending rounds, uh, we, we have seen that in recent decades, these attending rounds have evolved to reflect the complexity of the inpatient environment by including advanced practice providers bedside nurses, patients, and families. The goal of attending rounds have also evolved over time to reflect the diverse uh, priorities of inpatient healthcare delivery, with more emphasis being placed on advancing patient care than actually teaching. So, and updating the and this the evolving rounds also, it updates the morning team with the overnight information relative to trainee education and evaluation than in traditional bedside rounds. As a result, both trainees and attendings have reported increased tension and dissatisfaction with rounding practices due to the perceived decrease in clinical education and increased time pressure for task completion. Actually, as the clinical rounds have evolved, uh, you know, um, uh, these attending means the attending physicians, and the trainees means residents as well as the medical students. They have been reported they have been reporting increased tension and dissatisfaction with rounding practices because they have to do many paperwork the and many task completion, and so there is less of clinical education in these rounds. So changes to rounding practices have been attributed to increasingly demanding and complex inpatient environment, as well as accreditation Council of Graduate Medical Education work hour restrictions. So this ACGME is just like MCI in India or NMC in India, so which has actually restricted the work hours of residents, and hence due to the work hour restrictions, you know, the clinical education, what we, what the residents and the medical students used to get, I I mean, it's lessening now. So as a result of work hours restrictions and increasing demand for trainees' time, learning to work efficiently in the medical system has become an important goal for resident education, along with the traditional topics such as medical knowledge and communication skills. However, many interventions have been aimed at improving these rounding efficiency, and these have focused on reducing time spent on external factors such as developing a structured. I mean, these interventions have been used for improving rounding efficiency, like developing structured rounding tools for data gathering, standardizing the electronic medical record, regionalizing the patients, and reducing time wasting interruption on rounds without addressing trainee and attending behaviors during rounds. So sometimes the attending physicians' behaviors uh, and trainee behaviors are abrupt, and that's why this sometimes time is wasted. So there have been many interventions in past, um, which actually addresses these external factors. Which actually um, which have actually implemented these EMRs and regionalizing patients and developing structured rounding tools. But still, uh, I mean, the clinical education is still, is of not of that level which the patrons say जितना होना चाहिए उतना नहीं शायद हो पा रहा है clinical education. So the aim and objectives of this research was to implement and evaluate net rounding. I will be explaining net, what is net. Net rounding, a novel structured and goal-oriented rounding strategy aimed at improving rounding efficiency while maintaining the foundational aspects of patient care, clinical education that are critical to inpatient care delivery and trainee education. So this is all about, this paper is article is all about net rounding. We'll see what is net rounding. So going by the methodology, the settings and participants, the study was conducted in a large urban quaternary academic hospital. Teaching service team included one internal medicine attending. Again, this attending means attending physician. We can, probably this attending is what we call registrar in our place, uh, or the senior resident. I mean, this is similar to this internal medicine attending, or then one second year or third year internal medicine is resident, two first year residents, and one to three medical students. So this is the teaching service team. Participants included a total of 64 attendings and 83 internal medicine residents across the 8 inpatient teams. So 8 inpatient teams were formed, which included 64 attendings and 83 internal medicine residents. The study period was in spring 2021. So the course of 3 months, March to May 21, as previously assigned by their usual clinical schedule, 10 to 14 rotations for attendings and 2 to 4 week rotations for interns and residents. So again, this rotations for attendings means these are senior residents or registrar. So rounds typically, but are not required to include presentation of overnight admissions by a night resident, intern, and student hallway presentations of established team patients and bedside education, communication with the patient, family, and multidisciplinary teams on most to all established patients. So this is what round is typically comprises of, and there is a designated start time for rounds, but otherwise no institutional requirement for structure or content of rounds is mentioned. So what is the program description? I mean, what they have done in this research. So they initially they used A3 problem solving and change management framework. What is this A3 problem solving? This A3 word has come from A3 size paper, and this technique was used in Toyota. टोयोटा वाले ये यूज करते थे और उसके डिफरेंट कंपोनेंट्स रहते थे एंड देन दे एक्चुअली यू नो with this framework they try to solve their problems or change management framework for achieving better efficiency. So using A3 problem solving and change management framework, of volunteer working group of 13 internal medicine residents and 10 attendings convened during bi-weekly meetings. So it is before the spring, September to December to 2020. This A3 problem solving and change management framework was made during bi-weekly meetings over the course of 4 months. This was done to investigate factors that contributed to ACGME work hour violations on the inpatient service. And during analysis of current conditions, the problem of rounding inefficiency was identified and selected by the group of for further investigation and intervention. The working group used a five whys framework. I will be showing that framework, five whys, to perform a root cause analysis for contributors to rounding inefficiency, including structural, cultural, educational, or system-based factors. So these are the factors which have actually, have been investigated to perform a root cause analysis. Next, they generated countermeasures. These are the root cause analysis. So what are the countermeasures which can solve this root cause, and what are the expected outcomes for every root cause that contributing to rounding inefficiency in order to identify strategies that promote rounding efficiency. So from these countermeasures, expected outcomes, or you can say expected outcomes for every root cause have been assimilated in the net rounding. So that I will be showing you now. To do this, faculty members were interviewed with the Department of Medicine that were considered expert rounders. So this countermeasures and expected outcomes, how it developed. So it was developed with the faculty members which were interviewed with the Department of Medicine that were considered expert rounders, जो expert रहते थे round लेने में, and which were actually positive outliers, and held group brainstorming sessions, collected best practices from other inpatient services. So Um, so with this root cause analysis, these best practices, and with these best practices, this net rounding was made. These findings were synthesized and adapted to create the net rounding framework. Net rounding provides specific strategies to achieve the efficient, effective, and educational rounds in 150 minutes or less. So now I will be moving to um, UDF. So what is this net rounding? What is this net rounding? So net rounding is a set of is a set of is a set of 9 rounding strategies divided into 3 categories. So this NET stands for novel rounding strategies, E for shared expectations, and 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 T for time management. So this is net, full form of net. And just now I was talking about root cause analysis, countermeasures, and application to net rounding framework. So these are the root causes. From 5Y exercise, like rounds lack clarity of purpose. Purpose of round is not shared amongst the team members. Then rounds are structured to accomplish a wide range of tasks in patient care, trainee education, as well as clinical reasoning. Presentations are often unfocused, redundant with the information available in the EMR electronic medical record to all team members, and efficiency is not valued or taught to residents. Hidden curriculum epitomizes efficiency as opposite to thoroughness. So, uh, in response to this root cause, what were the countermeasures? So, define or set expectations among team members. Then, for second root cause, adopt best practices from other services and positive outliers within the Department of Medicine. Then presentations are often unfocused. Root cause optimize pre-rounding for all team members. Pilot alternative rounding methods that better utilize the EMR and time is spent on presentations. And then the fourth root cause, educate team members about efficiency mechanism that can be used during uh, rounds. So with these countermeasures, its application to net rounding framework were made. Like the first one, shared expectations, the second one, time management, and further minimum standards for resident and attending preparation for rounds, and then model prioritization for patient safety and education. So what we get, I mean, so the net rounding strategies. So this net rounding strategies, which include novel rounding strategies in this whole team readiness for rounds, then rounding with purpose, buddy system rounding, problem based planning rounds, and then shared a post presentation comments. So these are the rounding strategies which were applied in this paper. I mean, in this research. So now the inpatient teams were asked to choose at least one rounding strategy from each of the 3 categories. So there are 3 categories: NET, and out of that, one rounding strategies from each of the categories they have to choose, and they have to implement the bundled intervention for the duration 2 to 4 weeks, duration of their rotation 2 to 4 weeks. And prior to beginning the intervention, the residents and attendings were educated about net rounding rationale, key principles, and strategies through email announcements, placards in common spaces, and didactic sessions. The inpatient teams were incentivized with the nominal gift cards for team-based participation and individual survey completion. And from this, the team medical students were excluded from the intervention. So how this program was evaluated? So net rounding was assessed using online survey disseminated via email to team residents and attendings before and after their scheduled rotation. A daily round reporting tool and available team patient census data. The primary outcome was rounding duration. Secondary outcomes included impact of rounding on patient safety, educational value, resident perception of work or violations, and overall rotation experiences. So, with this, uh, with this program, the first baseline data for rounding duration and perception of rounding impact on educational value, patient safety, and resident duty by our violations were collected via 5-question online survey pre-intervention. So, and then intervention was done in the form of net rounding survey. During the intervention, a or brief 3-question rounding report tool was disseminated daily to team attendings to track rounding duration and patient safety events. And then post intervention, we assessed means they assessed net rounding impact on rounding duration, the same thing. So there were three phase. Baseline data was collected, and then the intervention was done in the form of net rounding, and then post intervention was done. Post intervention evaluation was done again on rounding duration, perception of education value, patient safety, and resident duty or violation. So a 5-point Likert scale was used for responses in all assessments except for patient safety, which was binary, yes or no, response with optional free text for further description. For postgraduates, uh, you should know Likert scale and Gutman scale. There are qualitative scales to assess any qualitative measure. Additionally, resident duty or violations were de-identified and collected from a user-restricted institutional work hours dashboard for the 4 months pre-intervention and during intervention for comparison. So this was done. The informed consent study design survey documents were submitted to the institutional review board and received approval via quality improvement designation. Um, in the analysis, chi-square analysis and the ANOVA was used. So now the results. Um, among the 83 residents who rotated in the inpatient teaching service during the intervention period, 47% completed the only 47 completed the pre-intervention survey, and 38.5% completed the post-intervention survey. Among the 64 attendings who rotated, 67 completed the pre-intervention and 70 completed the post-intervention. Daily report of rounding duration. If you see, why was completed by 81% of the attendings. So 81% of the rounding days was done. So both the groups reported high rates of net rounding implementation with 75% resident respondents and 73% attending respondents reported daily use of net rounding strategies during their rotation. Uh, Additionally, the average team patient census was not significantly different from over the 3 months of the intervention period, and 9.2 plus 1.3 patients in March, 9.3 plus zero point 0.8 in April, and 8.7 plus minus standard deviation zero point 0.6 in May. Uh, team to patient ratio didn't differ during this spring season. During the study period. So ANOVA was applied, and it was seen that there was no difference. P-value is insignificant. So among the 9 net rounding strategies that teams could choose from, 4 were identified by 68 of 74 attending and resident respondents, 92%, to be most helpful in achieving round efficiency. So, rounding with purpose and whole team readiness for rounds, prioritizing relevant data and problems, and establishing a daily rounding agenda. So, these were the strategies that were identified to be the most helpful in achieving rounds efficiency. Now, talking about post intervention, both the groups reported achieving the target rounding duration of 150 minutes or less, more than 80% of the time, significantly more than the pre intervention. So, if you see the table 3, so here pre and post intervention um, results were seen, and the outcomes are average rounding length. That is, if it is more than 150 minutes, then it is said that it is long hour rounding, long hour round. Frequency of safe plan by end of rounds, educational value of rounds, resident report of work or violations. So when you see, you'll see that um, in post intervention, all the outcomes have got they are significant, and in residents, and in attendings the average rounding length is highly significant between the pre and post intervention. And since the last outcome, resident report of work hour violation, is not applicable to attending, so that's why it is left blank. So with this, with this table, um, it was we can say that net rounding strategies um, were good in having the outcomes like good outcomes like average rounding length, and safe plan by frequency of safe plan, and then educational value of rounds, and work hour violations was also not reported. Was less reported in post intervention. So we can say by engaging attendings and residents in this shared rounding framework, net roundings offer significant benefits to workflow efficiency, patient care, residency education, and team satisfaction. So through net rounding, the paper also says that the authors demonstrated that implementing a bundled intervention with emphasis on improving uh, efficiency behaviors, creating shared expectations amongst team members, and establishing time-based goals can effectively shorten the length of daily attending rounds while improving the value and experience of rounds for team members and particularly trainees. So the conclusion of this study is that if net roundings is applied, it can actually shorten the length of daily attending rounds, and while improving the value and experience of rounds for team members, particularly trainees. So, so it can be concluded from it can be concluded that net rounding is a novel framework that can be used to guide residents and attendings towards efficient, effective, and educational rounds within the inpatient clinical learning environment. And the study also demonstrated that creating a shared framework amongst team members for purpose and practice of rounds can achieve rounding efficiency while maintaining the foundational aspects of patient care and clinical education. There are some limitations also of this. Um, I mean, there were a few limitations to note in the implementation and evaluation of net rounding. First, they implemented this framework at a single site with traditional inpatient teaching teams, which limits generalizability to other practice settings or multidisciplinary teams. Second, the intervention period occur later in the academic year when residents and interns are relatively experienced and will likely encounter fewer barriers to implementation within their established rounding practices. So these were the and lastly, we didn't directly measure the impact of net rounding on medical student or patient experience, as this was deemed out of scope of this particular study. Though we are encouraged that reported benefits of net rounding would seemingly benefit these groups as well. We aim to specifically address these limitations in future studies. So this is all about this article. The next the next I mean phase of my phase of this journal presentation is a critical appraisal of this article. So after knowing about this article, knowing the intricacies of this article, we can actually we should critically analyze this paper and and say what is the relevance of this paper in today's clinical today's clinical scenario. So the first initial questions we should be addressing: why was this done, study done, and what are its aims and objectives? So anyone from the group कोई बताएगा कि क्यों किया गया था ये स्टडी नेट राउंडिंग्स का? Anyone? Why was this study done? Do you find that was it really necessary to have this study done? कि मतलब ऐसे ही कर दिया इन्होंने, कोई मतलब है? So huh? Quality of the uh, resident education as well as patient care. So and so these questions were addressed in the introduction or not? So that we should be able to answer, while critically analyzing that why was this done and what are its aims and objectives, that was there in the background or introduction or not? It was there. Okay. So what is being tested or trying to be proved or disproved? It is clear what is being tested or trying to be proved. So what is being tested? What was being tested? Not different techniques, only one. उसकी उसी का प्री एंड पोस्ट है. ठीक है, सिर्फ नेट राउंडिंग को टेस्ट किया गया है. ठीक है, एंड दे आर ट्राइंग टू प्रूव वेदर दैट इज better than the traditional teaching or not. So who are the authors and what are their experience, qualification and backgrounds? You can see, तीन authors हैं, तीनों यूनिवर्सिटी ऑफ कैलिफोर्निया सैन फ्रांसिस्को से हैं. They are from medicine department. I don't know about their experience, but they are all um, clinicians. Department of medicine. Yeah, yeah, please. So that's what they showed in the that's what they showed in the ANOVA, that the time patient time. So if you see the first paragraph of the right column, additionally the average team patient census were not significantly different over the 3 months of the intervention period. So with I mean in this period, March, April, and May, it didn't vary. Okay, they should have compared with the. No, it is there. It is there. Yeah. अच्छा हाँ, the only thing I mean वो net rounding strategies was applicable for both attending physician and resident both. I mean दोनों को ये किया गया। जो आप बोल रहे हो, ऐसा क्यों लग रहा है, मैं पढ़ा हूँ ये कि जो पेशेंट का नंबर्स है वो डिफर नहीं किया है। मतलब प्री जो है और या पोस्ट है या फिर बहुत ज़्यादा डिफर नहीं किया। आप देख सकते हो जो इंटरवेंशन पीरियड है, एनोवा लगा है 9.2 पेशेंट्स इन मतलब पर टीम इन मार्च, देन 9.3 इन अप्रैल एंड 8.7 इन मई। सो देयर वाजंट हाँ टाइमिंग सेट होनी। ज्यादा टाइम लगा देते हैं। सो दैट्स व्हाट आई मीन दिस 9 नेट राउंडिंग स्ट्रेटजीज एम्स एट कि इसको करने से कुछ आई मीन इज देयर एनी बेनिफिट और नॉट। और ये मान के चल रहे हैं कि 2.5 घंटा से ज्यादा नहीं होना चाहिए राउंड, अदरवाइज प्रोबेबली प्रोडक्टिव नहीं होता है। सो नाउ कमिंग टू मेथोडोलॉजी, व्हाट टाइप ऑफ स्टडी इज इट? किस टाइप का स्टडी है? हाँ, इंटरवेंशनल स्टडी बिफोर एंड आफ्टर, प्री एंड पोस्ट। हाँ, नहीं नहीं, ये बस ना ये देखा स्प्रिंग सीजन में अप्रैल, हाँ वहां पर देखना चाहिए था कि पेयर टीचर्स देखना चाहिए था, मतलब बिफोर स्प्रिंग। नहीं नहीं, यहाँ पे ग्रुप है, यहाँ पे जो ग्रुप है वो मार्च, अप्रैल और मई है। वो जो दिखाया है कि मार्च, अप्रैल और मई में जो टीम पेशेंट सेंसस जो है वो उसमें कोई डिफरेंस नहीं है। मतलब पर टीम को 9 पेशेंट देखना पड़ रहा है। ठीक है, ये जो पेज है, पेज नंबर पेज नंबर 5 of 8, वो जो है वो इंटरवेंशन पीरियड का पेशेंट सेंसस देख रहे हैं, टीम पेशेंट सेंसस। नहीं नहीं, अरे नहीं तुम सी दो ग्रुप, टेबल 3 में क्या है कि 5, जो भी 5 आउटकम है उसको वो देख रहा है प्री एंड पोस्ट वो करके। वहां पे पेयर टी टेस्ट लगाया होगा। एक सेकंड। क्या लगा है, या काई स्क्वायर लगा है, काई स्क्वायर लगा है, ये काई स्क्वायर लगा है यहाँ पे, तो ये काई स्क्वायर लगाया गया है। जो टेबल 3 है उसमें रेजिडेंट्स का प्री एंड पोस्ट देखा जा रहा है, इंटरवेंशन, जो आउटकम्स का, ठीक है। हम लोग नहीं, पेयर टी टेस्ट किस चीज के लिए? जब वेरिएबल आपका कंटिन्यूअस होगा तब ना टी टेस्ट लगाओगे। वो एनोवा लगाया गया है सिर्फ पेशेंट सेंसस देखने के लिए। मार्च, आपका जो 3 ग्रुप है ना, मार्च अप्रैल और मई, उसमें कोई डिफरेंस नहीं आया है पेशेंट, टीम पेशेंट सेंसस का, ठीक है। बट रिजल्ट्स जो है वो रेजिडेंट का प्री एंड पोस्ट ऑन आउटकम्स जो है, ये वेरिएबल्स जो है, डिपेंडेंट वेरिएबल जो है वो उस पे देखा जा रहा है, और अटेंडिंग्स का। So is the design appropriate for the hypothesis? They wanted to test the net rounding strategy, whether it is improving the outcome, whatever outcome variable. So is the design appropriate? Yes. Is the study original? Yes. Subject recruitment, how did they recruit? Just a second. Just a second. So subject recruitment. So how did they recruit and who recruited it? Inclusion and exclusion criteria, why, payment setting. So subjects were residents and attendings. And how it was recruited? I mean, team was made. Hello. हाँ, भेज दिया मैडम, भेज दिया, आप देखिए। हाँ हाँ, अभी भेजे मैं। हाँ हाँ हाँ। सेटिंग ऑफ रिक्रूटमेंट, दैट क्वाटनरी हॉस आई मीन फर्स्ट टाइम आई वर्ड, हम लोग के यहाँ पर टर्शियरी तक ही है, यहाँ पर कुछ क्वाटनरी हॉस्पिटल, आई डोंट नो व्हाट डज इट मीन। लार्ज अर्बन, हाँ, क्वाटनरी एकेडमिक हॉस्पिटल, आई डोंट नो व्हाट इज दैट। So was this setting appropriate? प्राइमरी केयर और सेकेंडरी केयर, यूनाइटेड किंगडम, मैंने कहीं से उठा लिया है ये, मतलब यूनाइटेड किंगडम और अब्रॉड के लिए, चूंकि ये या तो गया है यूएस में। मोल, हाँ, तो वो लिमिटेशन तो अपना दे ही दिया, उनको मालूम है कि वो, नहीं तो पब्लिश ही नहीं होता ये। So is the study design appropriate for aims of the study? What was the intervention? ये हो गया। Any bias was there? bias हो सकता है, किसी तरह का bias। sample size, because they haven't mentioned about the any biases. So they have already told that bias can be in form of um, that anonymous, उन्होंने कर दिया था जब आप responses दे रहे हो, नहीं तो otherwise रेजिडेंट और अटेंडिंग जब आई मीन काम करते हैं तो उनको मालूम है कि कोई ना कोई फैकल्टी का ये इंटरवेंशन चल रहा है, ये नेट स्ट्रैटेजी है, तो वो अच्छा ही वो देना चाहेंगे। तो वो जो वर्क आवर वायलेशंस और वो है, जितने भी हैं प्री एंड पोस्ट बोथ, उन्होंने जो है वो एनोनिमस किया है, तो शायद बायस उससे डिक्रीज हो सकता है। अदरवाइज आर द रिजल्ट्स इजी टू रीड एंड फॉलो? कोई दिक्कत नहीं। कैन यू अप्लाई रिजल्ट्स टू योर प्रैक्टिस? हमारे क्लिनिकल सेटिंग्स में ये भी वो यूज हो सकता है। स्टैटिस्टिक्स, साइज ऑफ द सैंपल, ड्यूरेशन ऑफ फॉलोअप, कंप्लीटनेस, रिस्पॉन्स, ड्रॉपआउट्स, appropriate है सैंपल साइज? यू डोंट नो? इंटरवेंशनल स्टडी में मतलब देखा जाए तो फॉर ऑल प्रैक्टिकल पर्पस मिनिमम ऑफ 30 एंड देन एज पर द रिजल्ट्स, बट व्हेन देयर इज अ न्यू इंटरवेंशन एंड यू डोंट नो व्हाट विल बी द, so whatever sample size they can have, I mean, which is feasible, more than 30 can be used. What was the outcome? That is also maintained. वो भी mentioned outcome. Discussion में has the author given critical discussion about bias, criteria used, assessment tools used, intervention. Since we haven't discussed much about this, but बहुत critical नहीं about bias और criteria used नहीं discussion में नहीं किया। Have tables and graphs been explained in straightforward language? Yes. Have results been critically evaluated? Results को critically evaluate किया है क्या? So whenever you have to write when you are writing discussion, I mean whatever your results are, that should be critically evaluated. And one thing I would like to tell you that despite you know uh, it's a new I mean नोवेल अप्रोच, और इसमें आप देखोगे डिस्कशन में मोस्ट ऑफ द टाइम क्या होता है कि डिस्कशन में हम बहुत रेफरेंसेस ऐड करते हैं, कंपैरिजन करते हैं, बट दिस इन दिस डिस्कशन यू विल सी ओनली वन और टू पुराने postgraduates, you just see that even discussion can be written without any references. I mean, with a single reference that can be written. So you have to actually discuss your results. Why did you get it? And boundary around that. You have to make the boundary around the results. What you got it. So whenever a novel approach is there, you don't have many references to discuss with that. So you can actually explain everything about your findings in that discussion. And you can see it's a big discussion. So has the table grounds results been critically evaluated? Yes. Is author's conclusion consistent with the results of the study? Yes. How could results benefit my patients? Will this change my practice? We don't know, but yeah, if we apply this in our clinical setting, so probably it will improve. Probably, I don't know, in our setting, क्योंकि उनके देश और हमारे देश में बहुत डिफरेंस है, और उनके पेशेंट लोड और हमारे पेशेंट लोड में बहुत बहुत डिफरेंस है. So we don't know whether this would benefit my patients or not. Other question, was the study ethically approved? Yes. Is there a conflict of interest? If the investigator somehow, I mean, when you are assessing as an investigator, so I mean, there may be some I mean, यहाँ तो कोई conflict of interest नहीं है, क्योंकि किसी तरह का कोई product नहीं है. It's just the technique. So is title appropriate? Is title appropriate? ये शुरुआत में हमें डिस्कस करना चाहिए था, बट is title appropriate? कि और भी कुछ हो सकता है, कुछ और टाइटल हो सकता है इससे बेटर? सर क्या 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 फिर से? टाइटल? सर मैं ये मुझे लगता है कि मैंने ये इसीलिए उठाया था, ये क्या नेट राउंडिंग है, बस ये पढ़ने के लिए उठाया था। जब आपने बोला मुझे कि भाई क्या नॉवेल क्या है, तो यदि वहां दे दिया जाएगा तो हो सकता है आगे लोग पढ़े ही ना, एटलीस्ट इससे एब्स्ट्रैक्ट तो पढ़ेंगे। ओके। सो जब भी अब आई मीन नाउ न्यू ट्रेंड इज दैट आई मीन द टाइटल कैन बी वेरी शॉर्ट एंड इट शुड बी कैची। The only thing, I mean, the only requirement is nowadays is that title should be catchy. वो सब जो totally agreed, but that is for to totally for thesis and dissertation. But when publication, when you are going for publication, I mean, you should have a catchy title. So I think thank you, and